Good morning to you, Jonathan. Good morning. Okay, you thrust into the limelight as a 17-year-old on Britain's Got Talent. How old do you think you were when you realized you had that voice? In 2012, a 17-year-old boy shocked the world on Britain's Got Talent. Jonathan. Antoine's voice was pure magic. But behind the fame was a secret he kept for 28 years. The bullying started when he was just 4 years old. Kids threw food at him. Teachers found him crying alone. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. What happened to Jonathan wasn't just about weight or shyness. It was something deeper, something that explained why he felt so different his whole life. The truth he finally revealed will break your heart. Jonathan. Antoine was born on January 13, 1995, in Chigwell, Essex. On the outside, it looked like a quiet, privileged place to grow up. But inside his world, things were different. From an early age, Jonathan showed signs of rare musical talent. By 6, he had perfect pitch, something only about 1 in 10,000 people have. But while his gift was rare, no one paid much attention. Instead, Jonathan spent his school days being bullied so badly that teachers often found him crying alone. He used to hum long melodies to calm himself down. His mother, Julie, later shared that during the worst moments, he would quietly compose entire songs in his head. Even though he was showing signs of depression by the age of 8, his brain was doing something extraordinary. He could hear an opera once and remember every part. Doctors would later say he had a form of musical savant syndrome, something that shows up in fewer than 1 in 1,000 people. His struggle with weight began even earlier. When he was just 4, food became the only thing that brought him comfort. By 5, he was already 40 pounds heavier than he should have been. By 6, he weighed 95 pounds, more than double the average for his age. Kids threw food at him during lunch and called him cruel names. And the more they teased him, the more he turned to eating for comfort. At 10 years old, Jonathan weighed 154 pounds. His mother tried everything. She even mortgaged their house twice just to afford therapy, but nothing seemed to work. Experts would later diagnose him with a condition called trauma-induced hyperphagia, which affects only about 2% of bullied children and leads to extreme weight gain. The moment his voice was discovered came when no one expected it. He was 10 years old, and a substitute music teacher named Mrs. Williams was holding a normal choir audition. Jonathan tried to hide behind the other kids, but once he opened his mouth, everyone heard something that didn't seem real. His voice had the strength and tone of an adult tenor. Mrs. Williams later said it sounded like Pavarotti trapped in a child's body. An analysis of that first recording showed that Jonathan's voice could hit a frequency range far beyond what most children can manage. Even more surprising, he had natural vibrato, something that usually takes singers 20 years to learn. Within just a few weeks, he was singing solos meant for adults. He didn't need a microphone. His voice was measured at 95 dB, strong enough to fill a 2,000-seat hall. That moment was later called one of the most important discoveries in British music education. At 15, Jonathan entered the Stratford and East London Music Festival. He weighed 298 pounds and stood just over 5't" tall. He was up against 47 other singers, many of them professionally trained for years. His biggest rival was 17-year-old Victoria Sterling, who had already sung at the Royal Opera House. Jonathan chose to sing Nessun Dorma. By the time he finished, nearly 2,000 people had packed into a space meant for 1,200. The crowd gave him a standing ovation that lasted more than 4 minutes. One of the judges, Sir David Wilcox, gave him a score of 98 out of 100, the highest ever in the festival's history, along with a prize of 2,500. He got a recording offer. But more than that, for the first time, he felt what it was like to be cheered instead of mocked. That same year, he got accepted into the Royal Academy of Music's junior program. It was a rare moment. Out of more than 2,800 people who applied, only 23 were chosen. Jonathan's audition was nearly perfect, even though he had Vomited twice beforehand due to nerves. His teacher at the academy said his voice sounded like it belonged to a trained 25-year-old. The school usually charged over £8,000 a year, but they waived the fee after his mother showed how hard things were for them financially. Jonathan's weekends became packed with training, 6 hours of singing technique, 4 hours of theory, and 2 hours of performance coaching. At first, the other students ignored him because of how he looked, but 3 months later, he was cast in the lead role of the Magic Flute, making him the youngest person ever to do so in the academy's long history. In 2011, everything began to change when Jonathan's high school music teacher, Jenny Ewington, made a bold decision. She paired Jonathan, who was 17 and still weighed over 20 stone, with a 16-year-old named Charlotte Giaconelli. Charlotte had the confidence Jonathan lacked. She'd been performing since she was 8 and loved the spotlight. Jenny wasn't guessing. She picked Charlotte because she knew her strong stage presence could balance out Jonathan's powerful but shy voice. Their first duet was the prayer performed in front of just 15 students. But even in that small room, Jenny knew she had found something special. Jonathan and Charlotte were complete opposites. He practiced opera for hours each day, but avoided people. She had performed in over 30 musicals by age 16 and loved every second of being on stage. But when they sang together, their voices blended in a way that felt rare. Jonathan's tenor voice reached from C3 to C5. Charlotte's soprano voice went from C4 to C6. A music producer who heard their early recordings said it was the kind of vocal pairing that only happens once in a generation. But behind the scenes, things weren't always smooth. Charlotte had to push Jonathan constantly. He would sometimes have panic attacks before rehearsals and hide in the school bathroom. She would go find him, calm him down, and pull him back to the music room. To build confidence, they started performing at local events. Between February and April of 2012, they sang at 23 venues, churches,